Welcome to Mean Age Daydream with me, Brian McWilliams, where we're going to be making some jokes, laughing out at broken world, but also laying out the philosophy for the future, how we can fix this mess we're in and have a great time doing it all with a Mean Age Daydream. Welcome to Mean Age Daydream, everybody, where the sauce of life flows freely and over probably your eyebrows into your eyes a little bit. It's going to sting, but trust me, you want it in there. Anyway, welcome to the show, guys. I'm, of course, Brian McWilliams, your beautiful, bald host, here to deliver some philosophy, some news, some theory, and maybe even some comedy. So thank you for joining me. We are... Today on, we're going to talk about a little bit of, I think, ironic happenings, right? Because there's two different things going on in two major political environments. Number one is what happened in France over the past few days with the snap elections called by Macron and the celebratory rioting, which the French youngins seem to love to do when I don't even know if they're celebrating what they think they are. Namely, a outright assault on democracy, removal of choice by the elites, etc. And in the meantime, you have a letter written by Joe Biden that was just delivered to the Democrat National Party, the DNC, an open letter which also is striking down their attempts to do essentially the same thing here in the United States. So it's a very interesting time, I think, to look at what's going on in French politics, United States politics, because the crux of this is the elites that actually run the parties trying to maintain control above all else, and the people and the will of the people be goddamned. That seems to be where we're at. So we're going to talk about that today. We're also going to talk about a fun tweet from Elizabeth Warren, who, of course, I have no respect for. I think she's one of the dumber people on the planet. We're going to explain why she's self-owned and then get into maybe a couple other topics, maybe some Trump-owing stuff. Anywho, if you like what you're hearing, please do subscribe to this. They just struck down my Mean Age Daydream channel again on YouTube. Again, you know it's election season because they're going through all the old stuff. My Mean Age Daydream channel got a bit of content removed for medical misinformation, which I guarantee you, I know for a fact, it's going to be something about COVID vaccines, which I'm sure now is proven to be true, but YouTube doesn't care. So make sure you hit the subscribe button on Rumble. We're on Rumble. Please follow us there. On Twitter, we live cast to Twitter. So follow me at Brian McWilliams or at Lions of Liberty. Or you can get back on our YouTube now on the Lions of Liberty Network channel. Make sure you hit notify because you will not see it. We are shadow banned. All right. It's all right. And also Patreon, if you want to subscribe to us there, Lions of Liberty Locals, we have that too. Awesome. So back to the topic at hand here. The French leftists are out in the streets celebrating, and there were some videos that went around, one of which that had a banging, I don't know if she's mixed race, I don't know if she's straight up black, French, American, African French, like African American here. I don't know, some super hot chick dancing and giving the middle finger. It was like a montage of young people in France giving the middle finger because they had, quote unquote, defeated the fascists, even though I don't think they know what fascism is. But they were celebrating, is the point. The reason they were celebrating is because Marie Le Pen's national, it used to be called the National Front. I think they changed it now to the National Rally or something like that. Their party had gotten something like 34% of the vote, not enough to gain control of France's parliament, not to gain control of the government as a whole. And this is, of course, after Macron had kind of panic moved, called a snap election, which was opposed, by the way, by his own prime minister, who said, this is garbage. This is absolutely an affront to everything our government stands for. You shouldn't just be able to do this. He now wants to resign. Macron has begged him to stay on, and I'm not sure if he will or not. I guess he probably will for continuity's sake. But there was all this worry and hoopla because Marie Le Pen and her, what they're calling, far right-wing party, which is heavily anti-immigration and has been accused of partaking in Nazism. Doesn't help that, yes, some of their candidates were photographed wearing Nazi hats. You might want to scrub those social pages, guys, if you're going to go out there. But point being, France has been going through quite a bit of interest in regards to migration issues, in regards to skyrocketing crime, homelessness. As I mentioned in the last show, I'll be going to Paris for the Olympics. I'm curious to see what Paris looks like because I've seen videos of just hundreds and hundreds of, like, African migrants that have come in, or possibly Muslim. They look like African because I think a lot of that predominantly is from Africa that's coming into to France right now. Just standing street corners, basically like the homeless here in Los Angeles. Just every street corner, every nook has a person just lounging there. And not only that, but it's also obviously increases in crime. Anytime we talked about this before, anytime you have a airdrop of mass migrants in there that do not acculturate, that don't necessarily speak your language, don't necessarily accept your culture, its values, and then you have the taxpayers, the citizenry paying for everything for them, you're going to have a problem. And that's what's happening in France. The pushback on that is people say, well, that's racist. You got to accept everybody in, and blah, blah, blah. So what ended up happening is that the leftists had a coalition wherein they essentially dropped something like 200 candidates out in the second round of these elections, or maybe it's the third round of these elections. Apologies. I'm not deep in French politics on this, and I'm keeping track of this just as fast as you are. But the latest round of elections, they essentially got back behind closed doors, right? The elites that run these parties got behind closed doors and said, we're going to stop Marine Le Pen's party from gaining control. How we're going to do that? Well, all these candidates that people previously voted for in the prior rounds of elections. Hey, Reed's College. What's up, Reedy? So, Reed Coverdale, everybody, friend of the show. So, what ended up happening is they drop all these candidates. The people who voted for these candidates now no longer can vote for the people that got through the elections because these people may not have won, right? At least not compared to the Marine Le Pen candidate. So what they did was they colluded behind closed doors to deny the people of France their ability to vote for candidates they had already voiced their support for in order to condense their choices, deny them the choice of candidates that they preferred, and force them to vote for one candidate to consolidate power and keep control of the government, or at least at this point, not even keep control, because Marine Le Pen still won something like 134 seats, I think, but they don't have enough to control the government. Right? They're at an impasse. It's basically nobody can get anything done. It's a log jam. Great. Right? That's what these leftists wanted. Now it's getting kick the can down the road until 2027 when the French presidential elections are going to happen. So it amazes me when you see these leftists out there celebrating. Yes, we did it. Viva la fuck you. Okay, great. You're celebrating a denial of your democratic process. You are celebrating the elites, which I'm sure in your French smoking clubs, and when you get together in a bathtub and smoke a little French weed and diddle each other with your fingers, I'm sure you're complaining about the power elites that are ruining your country. And what do? Permit them to cater to their power whims, to deny you the candidates you voted for, and you just went out there and fucking accepted it and celebrated it. You are celebrating having your own dicks chopped off by the people you despise. You can't fucking write it better. It's mind-blowing how stupid people are. And they're out there in mass celebrate. Now, this ties into one of the things that I'm working on with the Libertarian Party, right? I look at these people. I look at these passionate, politically motivated freedom fighters and how stupid they are. How they don't get it. They don't understand how they're being manipulated. They say they stand up for certain values, but at the end of the day, they are just going to vote for whatever their, the most surface level beliefs possible are. That's what they are going to vote for. They don't understand the machinations behind it. They don't understand the Machiavellian nature of politics. They're just going to vote for the bill of goods, the lies, the promises they have been sold. Now, with the Libertarian Party, the rewrite, and yes, it's coming. Don't worry, the website's being redone right now. This is coming. I know I've been talking about it for months. I'm just waiting for the process, the wheels of change to turn. But my job is done here for the moment. The writing's been done. I don't want to lie to the public. I don't want to mislead them. I don't want to, run them down this same bullshit road that the French people have just been run down. But what I do want to do is inspire. Because look at what these people are doing. You look at the state of, like the UK. The UK just rang in a massive labor. I mean, a tidal wave. Labor won in a tidal wave over the more conservative base. You look at what's happening. The debasement of currencies. The mass migration causing huge problems with workforces, with cleanliness, with homelessness, with budget items, with violence and crime. These people are still voting in what they believe will be the utopia delivered. They're not even voting with their eyes, with their experience. People need to understand that. You can't sell people reality. You can't sell people stats. If it worked, you would see a vastly different political environment. It don't work. So what you have to sell people is a dream. You have to sell people inspiration, a promise of what's coming down the road. You have to sell them kumbaya in order to get their buy-in and get them to vote how you want them to vote. And then maybe you can change things. Now, for the leftist side of things, they continuously change things for the worse. Everything they touch turns to shit. We've seen it over and over and over again with everything. When you look around what's happening right now, it's like they can take something that's good. Right? Immigration is a good. You want immigration. You want people coming to your country that are going to bring quality and intelligence. You want a diversification of your population to an extent. But when you take it to the way these liberals are doing it, again, with mass migration, you are causing now cultural strife in your country. You are causing them to be a burden on the country. And then instead of saying, you know what, we made a mistake, let's slow it down here, let's think about this. You have people tripling, quadrupling down. As I mentioned in California, you have people saying, we're going to pay for you to go to college when the rest of us can barely pay our mortgage. This is what is happening. And yet, how do people vote? You're seeing it in the UK. You're seeing it in France. Maybe we'll see it here because it certainly seems to be following the same pattern. So, that's France. Viva la idiocy. Now, moving on. A similar situation is happening in the United States with Joe Biden. Joe Biden, who clearly at this point, it looks to be a Parkinson's situation, right? You're looking at the world's top Parkinson's doctor has been meeting with the White House doctor. It must just be a coincidence, right? They're playing backgammon. I mean, what's a game that doctors play? They probably trade organs. I mean, I know I would, it's like bringing over a Pokemon, did you catch them all? I got a gallstone. You got to see this gallstone. You plop that thing down, you trade, you leave with an eyeball. So anyway, the Parkinson's doctor is visiting with the White House and has been doing so for like a year. So, you got to add A squared plus B squared to a Pythagorean theorem on this together that Joe Biden clearly has Parkinson's. He should step down. He won't. Why? Because he's an egomaniacal monster. His family are egomaniacal, power-hungry monsters that are benefiting and feeding off the tit, like the leeches they are. They are not going to let this blood-soaked this bloody deer die until they've sucked all the blood out of it. So they're propping him up. And Hunter Biden, apparently Joe Biden's top advisor at this point in time, which is hilarious. And Joe Biden himself is either too delusional or I think just too stubborn to step down. So he just wrote an open letter to Congress. Well, open letter to the DNC, I should say. Congressional DNC members. And I'll read you a little bit of this letter. So here it is, his letter to Congress saying, and now he says, thank you to some of you who have supported me, right? Great, blah, 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 blah. But he then goes on to dedicate that he is running, he's staying in it, and to mention this. And this is very interesting, right? Okay. I can respond to this, quote unquote, the people that are trying to undermine or replace him or calling for a questioning of his sanity. I can respond to all this by saying clearly and unequivocally, I wouldn't be running again if I did not absolutely believe I was the best person to beat Donald Trump in 2024. I'm sure he does think that. We had a democratic nomination process, and the voters have spoken clearly and decisively. I received over 14 million votes, 87% of the votes cast across the entire nominating process. I have nearly 3,000 delegates, making me the presumptive nominee of our party by a wide margin. There was a process open to anybody who wanted to run. Only 3 chose to challenge me. One fared so badly he left the primaries to run as an independent. Another attacked me for being too old and was soundly defeated. The voters of the Democratic Party have voted. They have chosen me to be the nominee of the party. Wow. Now, do we just now say this process doesn't matter? Hold on. Do we now just say this process doesn't matter? Sorry, Joe Biden stroked out there reading that. That the voters don't have a say? I decline to do that, right? I'll leave it off there. You get what he's saying. This is why I call it the Joe Biden poison pill. He has explicitly said now in this letter, he's put it out in public. There's a reason that they released this open letter to the public. It's in order to poison pill the Democratic National Convention if they try to do anything here, if they try to subvert the process, if they try to force him out, if they try to have, some 50 different firms phrases for it, what they could do with this convention, a snap, whatever. If they try to do that, Joe Biden is saying explicitly, you are undermining the democratic process. Just like they did in France, by the way. The French didn't give a shit. The French were too power hungry. The people were too ensconced in their power, ensconced in velvet, right? George Costanza saying. They were ensconced in their power velvet in France. They didn't give a shit. They said, fuck you, public. We don't care who you want to vote for. These are going to be your choices. Everybody else is dropping out. We just had a little power coup here. The people of France celebrated because they're morons. Here, even though probably the majority of Democrats, and if the polling's to be believed, the majority of Democrats want Joe Biden out of there. Here, Joe Biden is pointing out the same thing. If you try to replace me, if you try to take me out, if you try to do this coup, whether it's a strong arm movement, if it's a soft movement of planting stories in the media, if it's subtle pressure and whatever leaks, if you do it, you are undermining the democratic process. You are taking the power away from voters and making yourselves into the massive fucking hypocrites we all know you to be anyway. Right? The Democrats say democracy is on the ballot. They are trying to take democracy off the ballot, says Joe Biden. Now, he ain't wrong. I mean, he's not wrong. That is what they are trying to effectively do. And a lot of people would call foul, especially if it's something where they shove a Kamala Harris in there or they shove a Gavin Newsom in there, right? After Joe is forced out. Joe Biden is making it explicitly clear that he's not going to take this line down and that he will, I think, go out of his way to point out the hypocrisy of the party. He will go out of his way to trash and poison the DNC to the point where whoever they put in there, and honestly, at this point, I don't know who they're going to put in there that's going to have a better chance than him anyway, but whoever they put in there is not going to have a single shred of chance because he's going to expose exactly what we already know to be true. Because we saw it happen with Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. We see it happen here with what they're talking about with Joe Biden. I mean, it's a fantastic time to be alive to see all these things happen, by the way. It's exciting. It's rewarding to see people reaping what they sow in regards to everything that's been going on with Joe Biden, propping this fucking man up for so long. A person who I believe is intrinsically evil to begin with anyway, having looked at his policies. Again, I don't need to remind you guys just how many failed policies, lies that Joe Biden has told, his complicitness in the 3-strike rule and targeting black communities that put a generation of black men in jail. I don't need to remind you guys of that. You know these things. The media and the DNC have conveniently forgotten these, have glanced over them, have decided to bury them in the annals of history. I love to see this kind of comeuppance. And I don't even know which way I'm rooting. I kind of hope that they do try to take Joe Biden out and he does blow this whole thing up and he does just sink that ship because it's a ship that needs to go down. Not to say the GOP isn't, but the DNC ship needs to sink. So what else can we say about DNC? Well, let's talk about Elizabeth Warren. Senator Elizabeth Warren, right? Who I don't even know why she thinks she should talk about economic matters because she's always wrong and she always makes stupid statements. But this one really was a goodie, right? This has 605,000 views. And she tweeted this on July 7th. When you stroll down the grocery aisle, nearly everything you see is made by a handful of big corporations. During the pandemic, those companies jacked up prices. But because of the lack of competition, they've continued to keep them high, and it's hurting everyday Americans. Now, literally everything that was said there is bullshit. it's either bullshit or it is an argument that is attacking corporations because of something the government did and forced into being, right? Let's break it down. So when you stroll down the grocery aisle, everything you see is made by a handful of big corporations. Yeah, that's true. Why is that true, Elizabeth? I'll tell you, it's true because of a number of regulations that you put into place that make it impossible for small businesses to get ahead, to create business. Corporate taxes are astronomically high still, and they want to make them higher. You also put in regulatory measures that limit how people can get into marketplaces because of the FDA, because of the, example, talk about Thomas Massey, right? And his Prime Act, trying to make meat accessible to smaller farms that then can ship it out to people rather than massive meat conglomerates, which is how our system is basically set up now. That's a good example of why you have situations like this. You also have shipping regulations. You also have taxes. You also have labeling requirements. All of these onerous basically walls that you place up to get into the marketplace is why only fucking giant corporations can afford to do it and how they dominate the marketplace. That's why regulatory environments created by big corporations working hand in hand with assholes like Elizabeth Warren to put more regulations in place, quote unquote, to safeguard the safety of the population, that in turn actually end up serving us up government sanctioned garbage. And that's what we eat. Because you know why? It's harder to get good food than it is to get government-sanctioned garbage. That's a fact. We find out later on. Look at the government's own food pyramid, which, by the way, remember when it was like eat 17 servings of bread a day? Do you know that is because they were working with the fucking manufacturers of wheat and bread products? Yeah, surprise. That's why. So when morons like Elizabeth Warren tell you that big corporations control everything and the reason they have all these products in the supermarket is because of price manipulation? What? Lack of competition? The lack of competition is because of you and your cronies. Now, let's move on to the next part. During the pandemic, those companies jacked up prices. Okay, I don't even know if that's true. Let's make that clear. What is true is that prices have gone up because of something called inflation. Inflation is a direct result of what? Everybody together, the government printing $4 trillion during the pandemic when they forced businesses to close down. You want to talk about eliminating competition in the marketplace, Elizabeth Warren? How about forcing businesses to close? How about forcing small businesses to shutter? How about making sure people couldn't go to work that were manufacturing competitive products? How about keeping fucking Amazon and Walmart open and Target open and forcing every other marketplace to close? How about that? And then, on top of that, you force $4 trillion into the marketplace, sending people checks during times when we don't have other products coming into market, by the way, because the shipping lanes were all closed down, right? Remember, ships were not allowed to come into port. So you have a perfect storm of non-competitive external goods and services coming over from China and wherever else, Peru and Spain, wherever you want to make your cheap offshore products. You stop that. Your domestic suppliers, now the necessary, or the, what do they call them? Not the necessary, the pivotal businesses. There was some stupid name they had for them. The vital businesses. My brain thesaurus isn't working. Necessary? God's going to drive me nuts. Well, fucking moving on. You had these companies that were permitted to stay open, right? And of course, they were the biggest ones because they had the most money, the most sway in Congress, and they were able to push through the ability to stay open. So you now have a lack of other competitive goods. You have a very tiny marketplace that's providing these said goods during an inflationary period. When you have a demand in a marketplace for something and not enough supply, well, of course the prices are going to go up. Of course they're going to go up. And at the same time, if I recall, there were also measures to improve the minimum wage laws across the country. So on top of all that, you're also demanding more minimum wage for people. So, of course, the prices are going to go up. Everything costs more money. Gas prices skyrocketed during the same period, right? Because nobody could get any gasoline. So, naturally, it's not because of government, that's not because of corporate greed. It's not because of some evil man pulling a switch in the back room with a cigar. It all is because of government and what you have done, Elizabeth. All of it. And the reason they've stayed high is because inflation has fucking stayed high. Even now, you've got foreign goods coming in, but the cost to ship those goods is still astronomically high because the price of gas was still astronomically high. The price of manufacturing, the price of labor is astronomically high. I don't know how you can tweet something out this fucking retarded and not in any way, shape, or form address the root cause. Just like, hey, these things happen. Boy, they suck, huh? Like, what? It's like if you walked up to somebody, punched them in the face, robbed them, and then looked down at them when they were lying there bleeding in the street without any money and went, God, this crime, huh? That sucks. Anyway, see you later. It's like, did fucking Forrest Gump write this tweet? This woman's a senator. She gets elected. Elizabeth Warren. Never change. All right, last thing, and then, second to last thing. This is a signifier on the good news train that we're winning, right? That sanity is winning, that the international war cabal is being knocked back, that people are actually seeing the truth about NATO, which is purported to be a defensive alliance, yet seems to be one of the more offensive organizations on a global scale, consistently encroaching on people's borders, putting missiles in foreign nations. You know the rest. But I've never in my life seen a commercial for NATO. And I doubt you have either. So let's take a peek, because the NATO summit is coming up, and NATO apparently feels that they have to run ads to let us know that they don't suck giant shit. So let's take a peek.
NATO means a future I can look forward to, knowing we are not alone.
NATO means supporting our Ukrainian friends in times of need.
Even though they're not
Slava
in
Ukraini.
NATO means our future. Stronger together.
This is all about Ukraine, by the way. This entire
NATO means protecting each other for the past 75 years and for the years to come.
War. Give us your troops.
NATO means working side by side every day,
but they could have found
civilian and
somebody better.
military,
They don't
to
even
improve
identify
our
this
security.
one. Just not a very good-looking corporate shield.
NATO means celebrating our differences and overcoming challenges together.
NATO means living in a free society and a chance to shape our own future.
NATO means serving a greater purpose to protect the ones that I love the most.
Yeah. Being in NATO endangers the United States far more than it helps the United States. If this fucking chud is out here with his douchebag mustache. And no, it's not John Odermatt. I know what you're thinking. It's not John Odermatt there. NATO means different things to different people, but it means one thing to all. What is it, NATO? Lay it on me. What does it mean? The protection of our freedom, our democracy, and our way of life. Except that it doesn't mean that you're protecting freedom and democracy in Ukraine. That's the irony of this, right? Ukraine, where they are forced conscripting men, they're literally taking them off the streets, ripping them away from their families, where they have literally mentally handicapped people serving in the military, where they've got elderly. The average age of the man in Ukraine, by the way, in the military is 41 at this point in time. So, and that's on top of the fact that they're recruiting like 18-year-olds. You've got a suspension of ability to get passports. You've got a suspension of presidential elections. So there's no democracy in Ukraine. It's just dictator Zelensky. You have got an eradication and a banning on the Russian Orthodox Church in the nation. And yet we're being told that we have to have NATO, that NATO is this wonderful thing. Look, NATO hasn't done anything for me. Since I've been alive, NATO hasn't done anything for me other than be a drain on our budget, a drain on our collective understanding of what good and evil are, a drain on our ability to live, I would say, a safe existence, because everything NATO does is across the world from me. Everything NATO does has a far greater risk of triggering something like a nuclear attack than it does of helping me stay safe and sane in my environment here, where I don't give a shit about what's happening between Russia and Ukraine. NATO hasn't done anything to put money into my pocket. NATO hasn't done anything to put goods or services into my pockets. NATO hasn't done anything to help my business grow. NATO has done one and one thing only: expanded the military-industrial complex. That's what NATO has done. And countries can say, oh, it's to protect our freedom, it's to protect this. Great. At whose expense? Mine. Because America still pays for almost all of NATO's budget. So, good for you. Congratulations. More people are waking up to this. If NATO, in advance of this BS summit, where Joe Biden is probably going to make another buffoon of himself, in advance of this summit, if NATO needs to run advertisements on X to remind us that it doesn't suck, guess what? It knows that it sucks. It knows the facade is crumbling. It knows that people are waking up to this bipolar world they're trying to create. They know that, by the way, people are questioning NATO's existence as countries flee to the BRICS side of things, and we get into this Orwellian nation-state setup, right? Where it's going to be, as I said, two big blobs constantly at war, or at least the threat of war, to keep us all just mired in our bullshit, right? Be afraid, guys, because Eurasia over there is going to attack at any point in time. You've got NATO over here with all these nations combining, sharing intelligence, spying on their populations, trying to censor speech through various programs. And yes, we know that's happening because you see it happen in the UK, you see it happening in Australia, you see it happening in Scotland, you see it happening in Ireland. All of these people are working together, and it ain't good. So, thanks for the ad, NATO. You've let us know that you're scared, and that makes me unbelievably happy. Please run some more of these fucking dog shit, condescendingly stupid ads to remind us just how vapidly obvious what you're doing is and who benefits, because it ain't me. All right, last thing. Speaking of people benefiting, Donald Trump was fined, as was pointed out by several people, but this is John Lefebvre had tweeted this one out. Donald Trump was fined $350 million because on a loan application, he overvalued, again, in a completely subjective valuation, he overvalued what Mar-a-Lago was worth on a loan, which of course he repaid on time. Nobody was harmed. Everybody benefited. $350 million. Counterpoint, Boeing, which of course is propped up by the United States government, by the Import-Export Bank, which is, by the way, should be eradicated just as much as the Fed should be eradicated. Import-Export Bank should be eradicated. It is simply a money funneling operation to keep companies afloat. So Boeing, despite all of the fraud that they have now pled guilty to, despite their planes falling out of the skies and their doors falling off and slow to get new product out the doors. And of course, they're doubling and tripling down on DEI stuff like that. So Boeing pleads guilty to criminal fraud conspiracy related to fatal numerous 737 MAX crashes in 2008 and 2019. Agrees to pay $243.6 million fine. Boeing created planes that crashed knowingly aware of the flaws within those planes. The government fines them $243.6 million. Donald Trump pays an interest back, or pays a loan back with interest to a bank, which he allegedly, subjectively overvalued his property by $20 million and is fined $350 million. Just what more can you say? What can you say about that? I don't think anything needs to be said. I think the simple fact there speaks for itself. How fucked this system is. How insane the lawfare leveled on Donald Trump is. And to go on record once more, I'm not voting for Donald Trump. I'm not going to vote for Donald Trump. I have my own issues with Donald Trump. But I think it's very clear what's been going on here. And this really brings it home. One is a guy the system doesn't like. One is a company the system is in love with, will prop up, will go out of its way to defend. It's despicable. It's fucking despicable. And if you want more despicable stuff, guys, please check out the First Episode podcast. We're doing another live podcast Thursday night. And this week we're going to be doing The Love Boat. And I forget the name of the new show. It's like some goofy dating show. We figured that would be appropriate. But check it out. We do a first episode, right? Either the pilot episode or the first episode of a classic show. We review it, decide if it still holds up, if it was a piece of crap, how much it changed as the seasons went on. And we do a brand new show for you. It's a lot of fun. You'll love it. It's the comedy side of me. So please check that out. You can find it very easily on Rumble, the First Episode podcast, or on podcasts wherever they're heard. Otherwise, guys, thank you for joining me. Don't forget to subscribe to the Lions of Liberty Network feed, as well as Finding Freedom has its own. Me and Age Daydream has its own feed on the podcast. Hit that subscribe, help us out, support the show, and otherwise, I'll see you next time. From me, Brian McWilliams, from the Lions of Liberty Network, and from me and Age Daydream, keep those electric eyes on me, babe. Keep that rig on to my head.